So many businesses with incredible good ideas have failed because they've taken on too much risk. So, what does it take to build an agile and scalable business while applying principles that will minimize risk and ensure business success? In today's episode, we will discover our guest who will give us nuggets of what it means to have scalable business and build without fear. Welcome to another episode of MoloMolo African Tech Stories. Today we have Eagle Eustace, founder of Unleash, a company that helps enterprises navigate the complexities of scaling software development while maintaining security, agility, and user centricity. They help companies to transition from risky, all-or-nothing releases to safer, more frequent deployments, all while keeping their user data private. They leverage agile project management to reduce technical debt and practical strategies for scaling software infrastructure without compromising on security. Welcome again, Eagle Eustace, to MoloMolo African Tech Stories.
Thank you for having me. And when you say it like that, I'm very. It sounds really cool what we're doing, and it's really cool. But thank you for that nice introduction. And thank you for having me.
I mean, of course, we just press record, right?
So
So I'm so happy that we are able to talk while recording, which is great. But I wanted us to start off with just again your background. Who is Eagle, and essentially how did it get to this point?
So who am I? I'm the typical kid that is in tech or that ended up in tech. I started as 11 years old. Probably got my first computer. Started to hack around, started to kind of get into software development or writing code. I wouldn't call it software development, maybe. Hacking computers, anything with a screen, anything with a keyboard. This is in early 90s. And continue to do so and still super interested in tech. Ended up graduating from college in computer science and started to do software development as a professional. Very fortunate to work with really strong developers, meaning really world-class developers, which is, of course, is harsh because you realize you're not as smart as them. But I was, and I believe my talent is basically getting stuff done and sort of really find myself super engaged in the product management side of things, business management side of things. So that's where I ended up in. And I spent 15 years in corporate before Unleash came across. So Unleash was created by my co-founder and brother, Ivar. When I was a VP of engineering at a large Norwegian company, and he brought this project to my mind saying, or my attention saying, hey, there's a lot of stuff going on here. This is sort of started to be some organic growth there. There is a pretty big install base now, and do you want to come and see if we can do something together? And that's what we did. We spent about a year exploring, is there a market? Is there a willingness to pay? Is there any competitors that we are up against? Is it really a reason for us to jump sort of, the pretty safe, high paid jobs to start and build something for your own? And after a year, we saw that there is an opportunity, and we raised some money, and here we are a few years later. So this is in 19, so now almost 6 years since we started the company.
Very cool. Wow. I mean, I think the concept for me is very interesting. In a way, it's almost common sense. So let me try and kind of break it down for myself and for the listeners and those who are watching this. So according to you, and I guess according to that 1 year that where you guys had to essentially do market research and product fit, essentially,
Mm.
why is it that that companies, especially startups, I'm assuming, and I'm assuming early phase projects and projects in general, why do you find that companies go all in, or at least have a very misunderstanding of risk and the impact of risk when it comes to just launching and trying to make something work?
Sure. I think this is something we as developers really are familiar with, right? What we do is pretty hard to understand for most people that isn't in tech. but when it doesn't work, we get blamed, right? It's sort of, it doesn't work and we keep, guys, you just need to make it work. And I think it's changing a bit, but I also seen a lot of organizations where the engineering department is sort of, it's a black box. There is smart people working there. I don't know what they're doing. Please just do what you do, but a bit quicker, right? You're always late. I think we can all of us can relate to this. You always want to do more, but it's really hard to explain why you need more people, more time, because it's sort of, it's difficult, right? It's very abstract and it's
Yeah.
really complicated, really complicated. And I think also harsh truth is, as engineers, you are not really trained in speaking the business language. So it's sort of, you can, every detail of something very complex systems, but translating that to somebody, decision-making people with money saying, I need more of this or more of that, it's sort of, sometimes that is not the easiest thing to do.
Yeah.
So I think that is also what we saw when we were founding this company is, that you want to go to production because there are so many good reasons for that, because it's really, really difficult to test something thoroughly before you are in the real
Yeah.
life, right? It's before you're in production. There's many tactics that you can apply that I've seen through the years that is really hard, complex, and expensive, like replicating in production environment, or I've seen projects where you want to make synthetic test data to sort of replicate the behavior of a production environment. You have the AI, the GDPR, that doesn't really allow you necessarily to move that data into
Yeah.
a pre-production environment as well. So engineers, they know this and understand this risk. So by decoupling going to production to releasing software to their end users, allow you to do like really, really smart things. So where DevOps, in like traditional DevOps and Agile, is super focused on getting work done and getting it sort of automated through from idea to the production environment, where we bring a value saying there is actually a next level to this, because your end customer doesn't really care about your super fancy automated CI/CD pipeline. Your business leader doesn't really care too much about if you're using that methodology or this data methodology. What they really care about is why HF are you not having a 5-star rating on App Store, right?
Yeah.
Or why are we still waiting for this feature? So by applying a tool such as Unleash, what you are allowed to do or able to do is sort of saying, let's just keep everything in main trunk and let's put it into production. But be very smart about when and who is seeing the new functionality. So you can say, I want to test this just for myself. I want to put it in my production environment. When I log into my business application or whatever application, I see the new feature, but nobody else.
Yeah.
If that seems to work, you can start going into saying, okay, let my team now start using this. Maybe my full company can start using this. So everybody logs in with my company domain is able to see this new feature, and that allows you this sort of feedback loop. Does it behave as expected?
Yeah, exactly.
Is there any unforeseen corner cases that we haven't thought about, and these type of things, and then you can go to the next level, and this is where the smart companies really are applying already, is sort of having early adapters, having new like end users, customers taking this new functionality, and we all know some customers are super eager to start and use the new thing. Some of them are saying, "Oh, I don't really care about this before it's really tested. Don't change stuff every time." Right? I think we all heard that feedback.
Yeah.
You're changing stuff too often. It's too much of an right. So you can sort of be very tactical about who is seeing this new feature. You can start engaging with those early adapters. You can also build a community with them saying, hey, Pola, you can get this access to this new feature, but I also want to set up kind of a Slack chat with you, or I can have and weekly sit down with you and sort of get your feedback. And that feedback loop is super important, because that gives you real learning.
Yeah.
You can really understand what you're trying to build. Is that being helpful or is it not? And you can also decrease the speed, meaning the feedback cycle, meaning you know this when you are doing development, you are doing really into your new feature, you're writing a ton of code. And if you need to wait for 3 weeks before you get any feedback, does that break or not? You
Yeah.
need to get back to that zone. You need to get back into that mindset. You need that context switch is really hard. So that's also what we allow that feedback cycle to stay in the context, to stay in that focus mindset. So you can sort of have this, quicker way to really get the thing done. And honestly speaking, it's also, and this also comes from, I think we can recognize from Agile, is when you work in smaller iterations, my learning and experience is that you tend to do less development because you just get in you get this good enough, or you get it to the point where you don't need to add stuff. I think there's a lot of goal plating that happens when you start saying, we can only release every second month or so. What do you want to do? You want to put in as much as possible because you are afraid to miss something that is important.
Yeah.
But when you have this opportunity to go quickly and really iterate and really kind of get to the bar where it's sort of good enough, I've seen business leaders coming back saying, we don't need to invest another 6 months in this feature because it's already, customer is really happy and we need to go on to the next one. And I think that is better for everyone. So yeah, I'm not sure if that helped you,
Yeah,
but
no,
that's
that's
some of the use
brilliant.
cases definitely.
I mean,
Yeah.
so I think, of course, I come from a more, how can I say, not object, but kind of physical engineering, right? So kind of mechanical, aerospace. I mean, that's my background. So of course, I have a very good appreciation for software, right? As a flight control engineer. But of course, in my world, we talk about system engineering, and we talk about,
Sure.
especially, MoloMolo is really a model-based system engineering consultancy
Mm,
now, and I think what you're saying resonates so much because it's
mm.
basically saying the feedback loops are not only important, but they gotta have the right context, and they've
Yes.
gotta have the right timing to effect the right decision,
Yeah.
and it's gotta be with the right stakeholders, not too many and not too little, because too little feedback or too little stakeholders or the wrong ones also is a problem in
Yeah.
diverting what is important, right?
Yeah. 100%. And I think that's interesting that you bring it up because what you talk about is what we refer to as air gapped environments, meaning you have, you're running on a chip, or you're running somewhere where you may or may not have online connectivity all the time.
Yeah,
So we also seen I would say the feature flagging is coming from the more kind of web app type of environment, obviously, but it's also, we are seeing more and more interesting chip providers looking into this. Can we really have this capability also enabled for like low code running on a chip in an air gapped environment? And you can. Obviously, you need to be a bit smart about it, but you definitely can, and that's also the beauty about Unleash, is that you can. We do support those area gapped environments, and obviously for software, we cannot do these changes on the chip itself or the hardware itself because that's not our core. But usually the hardware and software go hand in hand when you go really down to the lower levels there, and have that capability of turning, like runtime control is another word of saying this. You can turn something off, you can turn it on for really specific users and really specific context. It allows you to operate on a different scale or a different level, I would say.
yeah. I mean, I think that leads me kind of to the next question regarding just agility, because this is something that I think I often get wrong, and I think it's not that easy to get right, or to stay in that balance.
Mm,
What is your opinion regarding kind of agile principles and the need for being agile and kind of
mm,
incremental testing and development and so forth,
yeah.
and yet still having the big picture of compliance and the big picture of kind of the right documentation within such a, in a way, constantly changing
Mm.
environment that needs to be agile, but yet at the same time stay compliant? What's your opinion on kind of how does one go about keeping that balance?
Oh my God, this is a big question.
I know, I know.
No, but I think it's a fair question. I think there is a few sort of starting point for that conversation. I would say number one, I will address the compliance side of things, but one of the misunderstandings I'm facing again and again. I see less of it now, but I still see it every now and then. Is sort of this assumption that agility means no planning. So I definitely and also the challenge is that when you start bringing about the big picture planning that I think you were referring to here, if you talk to a lot of agile purists, they're sort of saying, well, we cannot plan for what we don't know. So why should we? That's waste of time. And my counter to that would be to say, well, you need to have an understanding, or it's really hard to know where you want to go if you don't have any idea of where you're heading, right? You need to have another, like the company, the business, and they can break it down to whatever level it makes sense. There is sort of an place where you want to go to, and the details of the planning may or may not be there, but you need to have like the big picture type of planning, and you need to also understand that agility means to revisit that plan accordingly, like really frequently. So a plan is not static. A plan is sort of, this is my best understanding as of today. Maybe that is even a 3 years plan. I want to take the company to this, or I want to take this hardware chip, whatever, to these capabilities. And these are the steps we are going to go through. And then you need to start getting sort of the validations moving. And as you bring in, then the compliance side of things come in. I think that compliance is often looked upon as sort of like a hassle. It just needs to be done. But if you look at it, it's also there for a reason. Why, right? If there is, in particular, like you are referring to, like if you go into aviation or really kind of, nobody want to go into an airplane where you sort of ask questions if this is really going to work or not, right? So
Yeah.
so it's a different. So we all get it, but I think the interesting pieces of this is that if you look at the big picture, compliance is usually there to say you need to have proper processes in place to serve security, safety, certain needs. And the compliance is basically, we also want to make sure that somebody external can come in and audit that you actually do what you're saying you want to do.
Yeah.
I'm not in the details of aviation and all of the hardware compliances, but I see that in finance. We work a lot with insurances and finance institutions where there is a lot of compliance requirements as well. And on the big picture, I can imagine that that's pretty much on the same thing, is that you need to have a proper process of disaster recovery. You need to have a proper process of how do you and do your quality assurance, right? And you also need to provide proof points that you do so. And the beauty is that at least in a lot of those compliances we are exposed to, that AI is supporting you a lot with that. So if you have a good process, if you are sort of, you need to do the boring stuff of doing what you say you're doing. So that is sort of, it's about the discipline of yourself and the team.
Yeah.
But if you do, you can also be very smart of making sure that what you do is sort of collecting those proof points, and don't make it as in something on top of, but making it into something that you do as part of your process. So when you are going through this sort of Q&A process, make sure that the quality assurance processes or whatever safety compliant work that you do is sort of, it's part of your everyday life, what you do when you do your whatever. And then you make sure that you have the logs or the reports or the whatever filed in a way. And maybe we are seeing that more and more. We're utilizing a ton of AI to support you with that repetitive tasks, right? It's about repetitive tasks.
Yeah.
So I don't see that there is really any contradictions to this, but I can definitely see that if you want to, like, you can definitely create a contradiction to them if you want to. But I find it more as saying, let's make sure that how we work, we need to have some process. We need to have some kind of, you need to have your dailies, you need to have maybe you have a weekly sprint or you have whatever.
Mhm.
And there are certain rituals that is coming along with those. Make sure to incorporate those compliance requirements as into your rituals. That makes that sort of not as an extra you do at the end, but a small piece that you do as part of your day-to-day work. I'm not sure if that makes sense to you or not.
No,
but
it
sort of-
it makes perfect sense, and I think if I were to go a level further, because I think that's something that we also help at least from a system engineering side, companies who are trying to digitize or who are trying to, bring about a certain level of best practice and also just knowledge base is the misconception that you just mentioned is agility doesn't mean lack of planning.
Mm.
But at the same time, I would also say that I think you have to start by thinking about what you want to do before actually doing it.
True.
Um, I think that a lot of software or startups in general just want to go because the emphasis is on the result, the end result at that point, as opposed to
Mm.
the process. And
Yeah.
and yet the process is the very thing that will provide a quality end result
Mm.
and keep on providing a quality end result. And I think that notion is such a, I mean, I wouldn't say I always get it because it's intrinsic, right? It's you're motivated by the results. So you just want to design, you want to code, you want to build, you want to test,
Yeah.
and you forget that a business is the boring stuff. It's the process. It's the kind of, what are you doing and how are you doing it, and can you do it
Yeah.
again and again and again, and it's boring, but that's just how life works if you want to succeed,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. No, 100%. And also when you start looking at that as sort of building a company, which is a sort of, it's similar but different, right? It's exactly what you say. It's sort of, can you do it and can you repeat doing it? And actually, when you're in the startup world, you also need to think about, can I hire somebody to do it? Because you need to scale up as well.
Very good point.
And if you want to hire somebody, and then we also just saying, oh, there is no process, there is no, we just go happy go lucky.
Go with the flow.
It may work, right? See work,
Yeah.
by probably. I would say I would not put my money on that it will work. And I think also you bring in system engineering. I think building a company is a lot about or thinking as a system engineer or building a system. It's sort of, what are the system, what is the critical parts, what is the validations. I'm not a system engineer by training, so my apologies if I'm sort of
It's
making
all
this
good.
simple. But it's sort of this sort of thinking about the steps and what are the input and output of those steps and what is important. And sometimes, and I think also in a earlier stage of a company, I think a mistake is either you do everything very systematic or as a process, or nothing as a process. You need to be somewhere in between.
Yeah.
And I think what is important is to understand what is critical enough right now that we do in a very systematic way, and where can we allow chaos because we don't know yet, right? So, and I think also that is often a mistake I've seen again and again, is that there is an all or nothing type of assumption. We cannot have systems because we are too young. Yes, you can have some systems, but you don't need to have systems of everything, or we need to have everything as sort of, and we are so innovative, we are so early, we're so creative,
Yeah.
right? So you
Yeah.
cannot have any system because that creates boundaries. I think the answer is always in between. And I think the art is sort of understanding where it is that's in between
Yeah.
in
Exactly.
your case. Yeah.
I mean, that's true, and I think that kind of leads me to kind of your findings over this time of building Unleash,
Mm.
in terms of just your surprise or at least something that kind of raised eyebrows regarding what type of agile practices you found really surprising and yet very effective that potentially most people don't really know or at least are not conscious of. Is there something like that
Mm.
that you found?
I think maybe my biggest surprise, so coming into this, this is my first time being very operational in anything go-to-market, meaning sales or marketing, right? So that was sort of a new area to me. In my corporate world, I was always sort of from the the engineering side of things, engaging with those sales leaders or marketing leaders, and they already knew everything of this, and we were sort of discussing not the details of how they operate, more kind of what we want to achieve as a business. So starting this business, you need to kind of be much more hands-on. And I would say one of my, it sounds like very naive, but one of my surprises is that agility really works also within sales and marketing. Obviously, the outcome is different. Obviously, the processes per se
Mm.
is different. But this way of, I think the key parts for me in from agility, and I think you're more educated in agility than myself. But then I think it's more of, I think that's um, my way of phrasing sort of some of these core principles is sort of doing is more important than writing. So so documentation. So getting it done and always has this focus of this is how we think we are doing it. This is what we're trying to do. This is a test, an experiment. And also how the retrospective saying, okay, this is what we did. What is the learnings and how can we apply them to make our process better? That works very well in sales. And that is actually a core part of a very well-functioning sales team,
Interesting.
is that they do that. And one of the things I didn't say I enforced it because it already existed, but it's often referred to as a deal review, meaning as a sales team, you are sitting together and you're saying, this is the customer, prospect customer, this is the conversation we're having, this is the problem I'm facing, this is what I've tried to do based on our learnings and experience, and bring the full team together and saying, and also in enterprise sales, it's very common, which was an eye opener to me, to record the sales conversation. So you have recordings of all of the
Yeah.
sales meetings, so you can sort of listen in and to see the full team coming in saying, "Hey, I listened to your call when the customer was saying and talking about this. You responded with that, but I think what they were trying to get across was this."
Sure.
So you want to go back and sort of do that sort of improvement to your process, because everybody has the core process that we say we do as a team, and then you do that process slightly different
Correct.
than your peer, and then I'm sure you've seen that again and again. And that sort of team collaboration that I think is really fundamental in agile software development also is a really strong one in other parts of the business. So we see that in sales, we also see that in marketing, slightly different flavor, but it sort of comes back of saying what works, what didn't work,
Yeah.
what is the learnings, share openly and build that sort of culture of sharing and learning. So the retrospectives, I'm keeping it small, like sprints.
Yes.
If it's 1 week, is it 2 weeks, is it a month?
Yeah.
You know that needs to be adapted to the type of business you are in and the type of people you're working with.
Yeah.
Uh, but it sort of have this small experiments. Always call them experiments, that you want to learn, share that learning. Sometimes it wasn't any learning; it was non-conclusive. So okay, that is also learning.
Yes.
I think that is I feel I sound like a naive person when I'm saying that was a surprise to me, because it makes so much sense. But I think that was one of my eye openers.
No, I mean, this is brilliant. I mean, for me, it's surprising. I think oftentimes we almost leave sales, at least sales-orientated personnel, as these type of kind of, they on the fly kind of, they kind of understand the customer, and but yet you don't necessarily correlate that process with the need to retrospect, with the need to have structure on feedback, and kind of putting into an agile environment where you document your learnings, and not
Mm.
these kind of on the cuff, off the cuff conversation. I'll call you back. Because I mean, that's what we get to learn about what a sales guy does, right?
Mm.
He's a very people person, and because of that, it
Yes.
should be unstructured and learn the customer and feel the whatever conversation. And what you're saying is, in actual fact, the success rate can be increased
Mm.
through having an agile structure that has
Yeah.
retrospect and has consistent feedback. That's very surprising.
Yeah. No, and I think you're right, and I think it's definitely the case that we all seen those, high flying, high big shots type of salespeople making a bit of joke of that, but some of the most experienced and great ones I've seen is basically it's super structured people. Of course, they need to relate. They need to be kind of people focused
Yeah.
type of personalities, because you are dealing with people and it's a lot about art as well. But they really the best salespeople I've worked with is super structured, super focused on sort of this is the process, this is the sort of the next step, this is sort of really kind of document what is the pain, and also don't want to move forward if there is no pain, because that is often what we have seen also, is that there is a lot of interest in engaging, but you're more looking to educate yourself versus that you're actually planning to buy something. And then it's about time, and priority of time. We definitely want to educate, but that's probably more in the marketing department than in sales department.
Yeah. Yeah. Very, very cool. So I guess that leads then to success, and I'm very curious to hear your opinion regarding your definition and your measure of success, specifically within an agile environment. I don't know whether it's KPIs or specific things that you kind of emphasize again and again. What are some of those things, and how do you define and measure success?
Yeah, I think that is it's a good question, but it's also very difficult, almost impossible question to respond to, because it's very contextual. It
Yeah.
really depends a ton of what you're trying to achieve. I think the biggest failure is to say this is the key KPI that you want to measure. Based on what I've seen and my experience is that clear KPIs and clear targets, goals, whatever you want to. I'm very easygoing when, if you want to call it a scorecard, an OKR, everybody's talking about the OKRs or KPI. I don't really care. What I care about is it needs to be really clear and it needs to align with where you want to go. So based on this, I think the biggest challenge is sort of how do you break down the core targets for your company, for your organization, into something that is easy to feel that you can contribute to, right?
Mhm.
If you look at a small company, it's usually very simple, because if there is like 50 people, it's sort of, okay, we can come together. Sort of, it's usually revenue is the end result, right? Increased revenue. But then you can start breaking it down and saying, okay, this month, this customer is super important to us, or this new capability is important for us to take us into this type of conversation with our customers. On larger organization, I think that is a core responsibility of the leadership, to really sort of translate. This is what the company is talking about. This is what the business unit is talking about. This is what the department is talking about. And this is how we as a team or multiple teams are contributing, or this is where we play a difference.
Yeah.
And because if you're sort of one of, I don't know, a couple of thousands developers, and you're saying, okay, this is the big goal, just go in and focus on that in your daily life, it's really hard for you to make decisions based on that. And I think also agility is about trusting people to make decisions as much as possible.
Mm.
But if you want to take a lot of decisions and the bigger decisions, you also need to understand what is important as an outcome.
Yeah.
And if that is unclear, it's really easy to say, well, and I think one of the things you mentioned earlier on was sort of balancing technical depth and sort of the feature capability. It's without context, it's almost impossible to say which one is more important.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. So I think it's depends. I think what I'm looking for always when I want to seek good targets and work with targets is make the targets achievable, make them stretchy, make them applicable to those that is sort of in charge, or that is sort of measured against them, or part of that team.
Yeah.
But KPIs, they tend to work.
Yeah.
If they are constructed in a way that it makes sense, and then they can release a lot of energy in a team, but they can also create a lot of this, how would you say that, lack of focus in a team if they are not constructed properly.
Yeah. No, that's very good. I mean, I did a kind of a short video regarding just wrong KPIs, because KPIs can can destroy a company culture.
Yeah.
It really can, and I think at least the ones the ones that when I think about success, I always think it's got nothing to do with the individual. It's got everything to do with the
Mm.
team.
Yeah.
And my assumption is that the more the team needs to produce on a frequent basis, the more the emphasis should be on the team succeeding,
Yeah. Yeah.
and in a way kind of drive as much of the energy that that team has towards that team
Mm.
success.
Yeah.
It's not easy because you need to measure everybody individually, but you can definitely use a lens of a team as opposed to a lens of an individual, for sure.
No, 100%. And in particular engineering, I think it's seldom. And I think also, I would say, one of my anti-patterns in Agile is I call him the hero. If there is a team and there is this one great guy, and usually it's a great guy, unfortunately, that is sort of the hero that is always coming in and fixing the problem, or
Yeah.
just give it to this guy and we will have it sorted. That is anti-pattern of a well-functioning team, because particularly when you get into large organization, you sh- I you shouldn't know of individuals in a team. I mean, you want to know of them because, of course, you want to know who is. You want to have a personal relationship, and you need to kind of engage with them. But you should know the hero of a team.
Yeah.
And I see that again and again, and also in very large and mature organizations, that there is this storytelling of the hero,
Mm.
the guy that is coming in and saving everybody because they are so smart. It goes with sort of the pride that it's smart. Exactly. But then again, that's not the situation you want to have, right? Because
Yeah.
you are so dependent on that person, and also the team is probably there is talents in that team that is sort of not not allowed to sort of accelerate because this person is probably a bit older, tends to be a bit kind of more experienced, and I've actually been focusing very much on not having heroes. So I've taken over teams in my corporate world and started to remove them from teams, saying you should not be in that team because the team need to step up, and they need to bring them out of the team and allow people to fill that vacuum that happens, and
Yeah.
everybody's freaking out. This is going to be so crazy, and well, of course, it's a bit scary. But how can you get a well-functioning team that delivers? Because there is probably 6, 7 people in that team, and if they are not working at their full capacity, it's
Yeah.
yeah,
I
you get
mean,
my point.
I think that leads definitely to my next question, because and this is regarding kind of technical debt in agile environments, right?
Yeah.
Where the interdependency of someone who knows a lot, who can even tell you that, I was here before, you even went to school, and
Exactly.
and so I guess my question is, um what are some strategies and ways to manage or to reduce technical debt,
Mm.
while still being agile and shipping things fast? And I
Yeah.
mean, what's your kind of view on this?
Yeah, it's a very well-known problem, I would say. I would say maybe start with a few characteristics of some behaviors I've seen in organizations. Um, I think one pattern or anti-pattern is where there is two separate teams. There is a product team and there's a technical team.
Mhm.
And particularly in situations where the product team is very business savvy and the technical team is very little business savvy, there is a high risk of the project manager says this is the most important thing, so I don't care about taking the debt because that slows us down. We cannot do anything that doesn't really produce anything value for the customers, so go and do a thing.
Yeah.
The challenge with that, when that starts to occur, is that developer tends to first they tend to start following because they are tends to be very kind of following the leader.
Yeah.
And you start accumulating the technical debt. And that we all know that creates a lot of issues that makes the code really hard to navigate. It may lead to difficult changes, may lead to higher risk. So either I've seen two patterns appearing over time in these situations. Either the developer starts to do it. I call it dark work. They just start to do it, and by sort of saying, "I don't care about you. I say to you in your face that I'm doing this, but I don't. I do take care of my technical debt." And the product manager is getting very frustrated. Why is this taking so long? I'm waiting for this. I don't see any progress at all. And it's really done. The other part is that you don't start fixing the technical debt, and you do. And you get into more and more trouble. And at some point, it just gets a big blow up.
Yeah.
And then it starts to be real. So what is the tactics to handle this? I would say what I've personally been doing a lot is to have always one roadmap. There is technical debt items on the roadmap. There is business features, capabilities in that roadmap, and the full backlog. The full backlog needs to be discussed when that happens. That makes it more visible. The problem is usually that the technical debt is really difficult to prioritize, because it's sort of, you want to rewrite something. Maybe you need to, sometimes it's super easy because it says, well, Java something is running out of life. We need to upgrade to the latest version. And that's the deadline when this needs to happen.
Yep.
But usually it's more of, we should clean up the code. Do you need to do it today, or can you wait to the next month? You can wait to the next month, right?
Yeah.
So the reason for why it's important now is really difficult. So if you have, so it's sort of, what I've seen is sort of breaking the backlog into technical and non-technical backlog items is the first step. And then also break the technical debt into smaller pieces. Meaning, don't make it like a 6 months full project to do something. Make it into small incremental improvements. Can that be done? Sometimes not. Usually you can, but you of course need to have a time to prepare for that. I also seen there is tools that supports you to monitor your source code and saying, where do you change the code most frequently and where do you seldom make changes? And of course, it makes sense to keep the where it changes a ton. Maybe that's where you focus, and you can leave some of that technical debt for a later stage until that part of your application is getting more attention. That is maybe a bit risky, but it also allows you to kind of say that technical debt isn't just technical debt; that there is differences, right? And also, I've also seen practices where you're saying, well, we always want to have 25% of the sprint backlog being technical debt items. Or you can have sort of agreements or policies in a team saying, when you go into that part of the code, you always make it a bit bigger, a bit better. So part of your day-to-day work is sort of cleaning up a bit. But it's a really, really difficult question. And I think one of the things in corporate world, I always was saying, I need one backlog, one roadmap, and eventually I want one responsible that is carrying the full responsibility for application, technical debt, as well as the business side of things.
Yeah.
So I'm from a camp where I have a lot of expectation towards, if that's a product manager, I have a lot of expectation that the product manager need to really understand software development, or at least have a very strong engineering support that is sort of making this person prioritizing both camps. Because if there's only one side of the things, you're not getting anywhere, or at least you are getting into trouble at some point.
Yeah. No, thanks for giving such in-depth perspectives. I mean, the point is, it's not easy, right? And I think what you're saying is that you've gotta want to make it part of the culture, right? And not just
culture.
Exactly. Not just kind of a technical output or a kind of performance-driven metric, but really kind of, we have to want to care about, making sure that we don't have these emergent properties of our code popping up everywhere, because essentially we just didn't slow down and really look at what is it that we're missing, and what is it that we're not explaining, or really ensuring that we are taking care of for the long term and not the short term success. And I think that's how I'm seeing it, right?
Yeah, no, 100%. And I think also the other side of the technical depth, it's usually longer away from the business conversation, right? It's but a big surprise to me in this on this topic was I'm not sure if you're familiar. I guess you are. Net Promoter Score is a very common way of measuring how well is a application performing. Um, and when you start looking at that, and I've been working with this in multiple organizations, when you have, or if you have really bad scores, like really, really, really bad performing application, that usually the reason is, I've never seen, it's missing this feature.
Yeah.
Problem is, it's too buggy, it's too slow, it doesn't really work. It's about technical depth for the most part.
Yeah.
And then sometimes it's something about, call it the UX, the design of things, the flow of how you navigate. It's also quite common topic. And bringing that also into the conversation makes it more business applicable, saying we are seeing and measuring the Net Promoter Score can also give you kind of this arguments why you need to pay attention here, because if you have 200 feedback saying, well, I sort of like your application, but it's really slow and it's super buggy, so it doesn't really. Yeah, I mean, that's sort of, we just need to fix this, and that's usually a technical debt issue.
Yeah. Wow. Um, I guess that leads me essentially to my kind of final question, and it's a very I'll try and bring it a bit broad and bring it back. So, as you know, this is African tech stories, and of course our target audience, or at least our aim, is to always try and enlighten the African continent and those who care about the development in that continent. And so, what are some of the things when it comes to your view on agile development, agile kind of way of thinking, mindset shift, that you would say can be applicable to an environment like Africa, or kind of second world economies, where there's no structure inherent, there's no inherent structure. What I mean by inherent, I mean that even from a qualification or way of working perspective, who you hire is often has some level of technical depth that they don't necessarily are aware of, or they need to be made aware of. So I guess going from there to Unleash, what are some
Mhm.
potential opportunities or potential kind of vision that you see for companies in those countries that potentially need to understand these types of principles? What would you say?
Mhm. Oh, I'm so pleased with this cool question, but I feel so uneducated. I know Africa is so big. I mean,
It is.
it
It is.
does. I mean, just talk about Africa is probably kind of setting somebody. Oh, I mean, it's upsetting people because it's so
That's
much
true.
complicated and so right. Both in size and number of population. I mean, it's also Europe is so small compared to Africa.
That's true.
So, but looking, so I think that um, to come back to your question, um, there's a few really core parts of agile that I think is really, really valuable for everybody. Agile is very much about learning, learning from doing. And I think I'm not sure if I can state so, but I believe that it's also coming from a high level of trust, meaning that, um, or at least if you look at the agility on a bigger picture, there needs to be this trust that you as an individual team member are capable, but also allowed. So I need to, if I'm the manager and you are my team member, I need to trust you that you can take decisions independently of myself. But you need also to have trust in me, saying that you are allowed and you can actually take those decisions. So I'm not suggesting that that is not the case with Africa, because I'm feeling really uneducated on the continent, to be frank. But I've seen in cultures where there is a very kind of what do you call it? It's called a high power distance, meaning the manager decides,
Yeah, a
and the
hierarchy.
manager always has exactly. There's a very strong hierarchy. So if you are in an African country where this is the case, you should challenge yourself to how can you create a culture where the team members feel empowered
Yeah.
to make those decisions, but also when those decisions are wrong, because they will be wrong.
Yeah.
That is part of decision making. That is an opportunity to learn, and that doesn't mean not to be accountable. So that's a different thing. Being accountable is that you are, I'm taking my responsibility. This is on me. But it also means that you are taking that into consideration. You learn and you adapt. So I think this is probably the part of agility that can be most difficult. I'm not suggesting that that's the case for Africa in the bigger picture, because it's again so massive. But I think the agility I know is really, it works really well when this trust is created and is in place. And if there is no trust, there is probably also slower speed. You can maybe be quicker, but then again, if you need to go to a manager and maybe the manager needs to go to the manager to get approval, that just takes time.
Yeah. Yeah.
And if you need to always get approval for everything, you're sort of losing some of the big benefits of this, the speed that you may get from agility.
Yeah.
So some of the things that I've seen also in other parts of Northern Europe, where there is, or at least if you read the literature, there tends to be lowered, less of an hierarchy. One thing that usually is something to really look for is sort of, is there a clear definition, or is it a clear understanding, is a better way maybe, to what are the decision that you are expected to make, and where is there no decision-making power? Because there is also in agility, there are certain kind of decisions that you cannot, you are not empowered to make.
Yeah.
Simple thing, we need to hire another developer because of that. It's usually have some budget impact, right?
Yep.
It's a silly question, but I think you get the point. So it's sort of so some of the things I have done in the past when I see this, it's not clear, is sort of be really outspoken of saying, this is the decision playground for you guys. And this is where you need to come and sort of seek approval, because it's for one reason or the other, that's where we need to have a bigger conversation because of. And when you have established that, it's also an exercise for me as a manager to give that decision making and sort of allowing that, and also be very consistent in not creating problems when those decisions are not leading to result immediately, because I think agility is more than anything about learning, and learning rapidly. And that takes you know, and I know that if you know everything, there is no learning need, right?
Yeah. Wow.
I'm not sure if that makes sense or
No,
that
it's
I just-
brilliant. It's brilliant. Yeah, I think what I'm getting from you is, it's, of course, in learning there needs to be trust embedded. In learning there needs to be mutual respect embedded.
Mm,
In agile learning there needs to be the focus on accountability, on each
mm,
other's action, and respecting that failure can happen, and it's part of the learning process, and that kind of feeds back into trust. Yeah, it's brilliant. I think this is definitely been an amazing discussion, Egil. I'm really thankful for you reaching out and for us to be able to discuss. This is definitely something that we all need to hear. That we can work more agile, but we have to take all these nuances into account. and it doesn't just happen by five super talented software engineers saying, yeah, let's just kind of you know make something
Oh,
happen.
it's a lot of hard work. It's always a lot of hard work.
Yeah, but no, Igor, thank you so much for this time. Thank you for coming on MoloMolo African Tech Stories.
And thank you again so much for having me. I'm super excited to be allowed to be a guest on your show.
And there you have it, another episode with Egil Ustus, who gave us such an amazing kind of description and analysis of what it means to build a business built on trust and built on understanding that we can be accountable, but at the same time be responsible and given the responsibility of doing things for the sake of the team. This was again just an incredible account of what it means to build a human-centric business and come up with human-centric solutions that not only allows us to have business success, but allows to empower every single person that is involved. Thank you again for watching another episode of MoloMolo African Tech Stories. This was a pleasure. Until next time, ciao.